Hello, my friend. You asked me to talk a bit about the difference between empathy and understanding and sympathy, and also to think a little bit about the need for both empathy and boundaries. So all of those things come together. So first of all, when we are in relation to other people, we are inclined initially to compare and contrast and to work out what we think is good and what we think is bad. And that gets us into being very discriminating about how different people do different things, have different characters. And what we learn to do when we do that is to stand in judgment of the other. So that is a quite negative way to relate to other people, but that might sometimes allow you to compare yourself favorably and give yourself courage, or to compare yourself negatively and thereby giving yourself an objective for positive change. So there could be good things in that sense of being judgmental about others and observing what you think is good about somebody and what you think is not so good about somebody. The problem with that is that you will end up really seeing people as others, as outsiders who you will judge and often disapprove of. And this makes it difficult to be in a good relationship. So the next port of call is that you will experience moments where you see somebody that you kind of feel superior to and you disapprove of in some way, but instead of feeling contempt or disapproval, you will feel a welling up of pity. So that is still you standing on your soapbox and looking down on the other and perceiving them as inferior to you, but instead of dismissing them for that inferiority, you now have a sense of pity, which is that you think you're very fortunate to be where you are, and you think it's very sad that they are where they are. Now, pity can be an improvement on judgment, but it can also be worse in a way, because once you've decided that a person is to be pitied, you put a kind of absolute bar between you and them. You put almost a wall between you that can never be crossed. Then you can move from pity to sympathy. Now, sympathy literally means to suffer with, sum pathos. So instead of distancing yourself from the other's plight, you now look at it and you wonder about it, and you feel a sense of recognition instead of pity. So you recognize things about what they're going through that you have gone through as well, and so you sympathize. And that unites you. But it can also block you in a way, because now you throw yourself at that person's mercy, as it were. You connect your experiences, and by doing that, you may sometimes not be discriminating enough about why it is harder for them or how it is different for them. You just kind of glue it together and you imagine that you're the same. and that you can feel exactly what they're feeling too. And now we come to empathy, because empathy, which has been a more recent phenomenon or an emotion that has been more detailed over the last century, really, to talk about the capacity, well, as Carl Rogers had it, to be intellectually understanding what a person is feeling and to be able to put yourself in their shoes without imagining it is your emotion and remembering what it is like on their side and really put yourself in their place whilst remembering that you are still in your place. So it is a more complex way of feeling about the other. And that opens the road to a much more complex form of empathy, which is that described by Karl Jaspers much earlier than Carl Rogers. And Jaspers spoke about empathy as Einfühlung, which is feeling into somebody's situation. And he defined this feeling into it as a participation in it. So empathy becomes the capacity to participate in a person's experience in quite a real way. And this will allow you not just to sympathize, not to feel pity, not to judge, but to investigate and try to understand. So we're moving towards the possibility of understanding without going under with somebody in their experience. And of course, when we teach empathy in psychotherapy training, it is always emphasized that empathy is not sympathy. It is not becoming somebody's friend. It is not agreeing with somebody. It is simply to allow them to express fully what their experience is, and for us to attune to it and resonate with it as much as we can, so that they feel heard and seen and validated and understood without getting drawn into the experience or trying to repair it or fix it or make it all right or express sadness about it or express any kind of judgment or emotion about it, and certainly not to start talking in sympathy as you would do with a friend about having had a similar experience yourself. Now, people often misunderstand these things. I feel that I greatly honor another person when I express sympathy with them, because it is a way of saying we are the same and I am your friend. Whereas when I'm a therapist, I will never do that. I will just listen and elicit more information and try to comprehend it even better, make myself more available for their experience. But that is also a distancing thing. It is to say, I am here at your service to help you understand. So that puts me either in a professional role or in a parental role or in the role of somebody who feels that they don't need mutuality in the relationship. So now we come to mutuality. So mutuality is when in a relationship people both express their own experiences and their own emotions and their own ideas about what is going on in a situation, as well as trying to understand what the other is going through. And in that process, there is a quid pro quo. Each contributes something. There is an exchange. And as you try to understand me, I try to understand you. And the mutuality of that leads to an equality in our relationship. So, though people have to go through all of those layers of relating to other people, good relationships are always built into both partners' capacity for all of those things. Sometimes to judge, sometimes to pity, sometimes to feel sympathy, sometimes to express empathy, but always together move in the direction of mutuality, where, my friend, you are building something together. You are building a common understanding of the world, and you're also implementing the basic principles of contributing in equal amounts, which doesn't mean doing the same things, but it does mean for each of you in the partnership to try to contribute as much as they can, and to learn from each other, to take feedback from each other, to listen to why the other person is feeling cross, or why they're feeling frustrated, or why they're feeling basically as if they're not being heard or seen or appreciated. All of those things are possible in the mutuality of a relationship where you're coming close together and you're making sure that you're constantly building on this way of creating joint and mutual understanding. That is the road towards love. Now, love is one step beyond. Love is nothing to do with attraction and lust. Those are all important experiences on quite a different level. Falling in love is about extreme attraction and a desire to be close to another, but none of that is about love. To love a person, you have to first know who they are. You have to first know who you are and what love there is in your heart to give. It is an extending of yourself towards the other, a wanting to know more and more about how they experience themselves and the world, and how they experience you, and how they're willing to share that with you. The more sharing there is, the more the love builds. The more there is a search for mutuality and listening and hearing and validating of each other and having each other's backs, no matter what happens, and the more you will start to understand the difference between mere empathy and love. But in a world where very few people do the work of loving, and where very few people encounter situations in which they build trust and mutuality, often the best we can do is to create empathy in the world. And if we can't create empathy, then it becomes very difficult to keep society functioning in any kind of together, cooperative, collaborative way. Because if you cannot try at least to give other people the benefit of the doubt and to try to understand what's going on for them, it's going to be very difficult to want to be close enough to collaborate. And you will end up in an isolated position where you will just end up judging people or using people or allowing yourself to be used. So standing up for empathy is important. Standing up for the possibility of mutuality is crucial, and beginning the work of love and enjoying the work of love and understanding of another human being in both directions is one of the most wonderful things you can learn to do in your life. To learn to love, truly love another person, and to learn to allow yourself to be loved, which also involves sometimes being supported or sometimes completely, being upset and still being listened to experience that mutuality of the work of love is what I wish on each and every one of you. But it will never just happen to you, my friend. It is a lifelong journey, and to find another person who is able and willing to do that work with you, no matter what the difficulties that you both have to go through, that is truly a sacred part of life. And it is sufficient unto itself, and it makes everything in the world have a new glow. So do the work. Don't be afraid, and know what joy will come to you when you learn to be in relationship in all these varied and different ways. And that, my friend, is only a small summary. There is a hell of a lot more to it than that. But I hope this helps you to get onto that step ladder and to, better still, start to carve out these steps in the rock of your life so that the road of your life is starting to gradually take a turn for the better, and you can see that you're ascending towards a better and better place each day as you're understanding it better and more able to do what you need to do. Take care, my friend.